I'd like to open the meeting. Mr. Broking, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready to begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Garber, were there any reports, actions taken in closed session today?
Yes, ma'am. The board held a special closed session on January 18th, 2011, and I'm reporting direction that was given by the board in that closed session. On January 13th, the IID Board met in closed session concerning a matter of potential litigation, Salton Sea restoration. In closed session, the board directed staff to prepare a resolution addressing Salton Sea restoration, recognizing the implications to the district, its water users, and the continued viability of the quantification settlement agreement to which IID is a party. The resolution shall call on the state of California to identify, support, and implement a Salton Sea restoration plan that is more credible and realistic than the current $9 billion preferred alternative, one that makes plain the explicit priorities of the mitigation of air impacts and preservation of habitat. The resolution will be presented to the board as an action item for consideration and adoption at its next scheduled meeting on February 1st, 2011.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Director Menville?
Yeah, Mr. Garber, was that a unanimous decision by the board?
I guess you could ask for a poll of the votes.
Yeah, we did not.
There was no action taken. There was direction given.
There was direction by the 5 board members, as I
Okay.
recall.
Thank you.
We will now move on to presentations. At this time, it is our pleasure to honor and recognize 11 employees for a total of 225 worker years of faithful service to the district. Would the board please join me?
All right, as the board is assembling, Madam President, members of the board, members of the public, this first award, this certificate of recognition and service pin replica of the district emblem are presented to Victor A. Turan for 10 years of loyal and faithful service to the Imperial Irrigation District.
I don't have my camera with me.
Michael, come on up here. Do the camera thing. Oh, Michael. He has a really good camera phone. Oh, there you go.
I don't know what happened to Bob.
Get closer, Mike.
For 20 years of service, Kirk Hale, Program Manager Senior in the Water Department. I'm not sure. For 20 years of service, Jeronimo Gonzalez, Hydro Operator 1 in the Energy Department. For 20 years of service, Larry Martinez Jr., Water Division Coordinator in the Water Department. For 20 years of service, Eduardo Suarez, hydrographer, canal operator in the Water Department. Is he here? No. And the last one, 20 years of service, Omar Brito, telecommunications specialist in the Energy Department.
Isn't that weird how in the dark nobody's going to notice?
Mike, come back here and take a picture with Tony. Put your arm around.
Now, is there anyone else here to receive a service award and I didn't call your name? Okay, that ends our service awards.
Thank you.
Nobody told me that I didn't have a matching. Look at my suit.
Oh. I do that all the time.
I do too.
All the time.
One time.
Yeah.
May I have approval of the agenda, items to be pulled from the agenda or order of the agenda items?
Well, I'll move for approval if there's no items to be pulled.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Please vote. This is a time for public comment. Please limit yourself to 5 minutes. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Madam Board of Directors, public, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Oscar Gonzalez. I live at 844 Encanto Terrace in Calexico, my home for the last 40 years. One of the things that I wanted to briefly focus, and I'm looking at cognizant of the time up there, the IID Board of Directors, especially the 3-2, seems to use Mr. Foster and Mr. Mike Morgan as scapegoats to rationalize IID's tremendous financial problems caused by IID. It's my opinion, and I'm not working for Mike Morgan on this one, it seems that I just see it from that perspective. In my critical analysis and content analysis, I came to the conclusion by the following points. I think the IID Board of Directors has to take responsibility and admit it is not also the Imperial Group causing your financial woes. Case in point, when you look at the offset overflow, initially when that project began, it borrowed approximately $300 million. What happened is that in the end, the fuel got too expensive and it was unable to pay that. The other point is the ECA project, yet another fiasco by the 3-2 IID board. Even today, we're lollygagging, and we really haven't addressed that project, and it hasn't been finalized by the Gang of Three, the 3-2 vote. The other point in my analysis is also when we hired Mr. John Eckert at $450,000 as a consultant for 28 weeks. Obviously, the purpose of Mr. Eckert was also to reorganize the IID system. He's been approximately a 15-year employee. What is compelling on this issue is that during the interview, Dr. Brian Grady stated to the board and emphasized that one of his strong points was reorganization, yet when he got hired, he hired a consultant to do his job. He also mentioned he was going to be moving to Imperial County and hasn't moved. When you look at the other point, hookup project, Unit 3, the purpose of that project was essentially to refurbish or to newly construct that system, and it borrowed a loan of $140 million, and later came out to be that the total cost was $250 million. No, $250 million. The other point, the fourth point in my content analysis was based or ostensibly the bonds. Obviously, the bonds became unpopular and were unable to be sold for many reasons, but yet Mr. Manville, Mrs. Mendoza, Mr. Anthony keep blaming Mike Morgan for their woes. And you know, it reminds me of crying wolf. One of these days, you're going to cry wolf, and Oscar Gonzalez is going to sue you because I'm a low income and I can sue anybody. And
You have
they
4
wait-
minutes, Mr. Gonzalez.
Huh?
You have 4 minutes. You have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. In conclusion, the process of Mr. Akard being hired was on a 3-2 vote. The general manager has a discretionary fund of over $200,000 and does not need board approval to spend any amount, and he may or may not have hired Mr. Akard in addition to being paid as a consultant. So, you know, in a good sense, we cannot continue, Mr. Manville, to say that it's Mr. Morgan. You have to take responsibilities, and, you know, you need to learn how to play as a team player with your board members, you know, all of them. So, thank you very much. Gracias.
Okay.
You made it under the wire, Oscar.
Hey, I'm practicing at home.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Ralph Strom, Holtville, California. I'd like to report out on the WCAB meeting. We elected new officers, as is set forth by our bylaws. And Mr. Ronnie Limegruber was selected as the chairman, and I am the vice chairman for 2011. All of the WCAB members were present, and we were introduced to 2 new WCAB members, Mr. Raul Rodriguez, representative of Director Mendoza, and Brent Peterson, representative of Anthony Sanchez. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Strom. Okay. Anyone else?
Barbara's getting out.
Orby Hanks, Raleigh, California. I've been trying to balance some water sheets and things that I picked up in the last week or so, and I have taken it upon myself to run a spreadsheet, and I have a lot of questions that can't be answered in 5 minutes, nor can they be answered in 350 words. But I'm going to issue a warning, invitation, or whatever in order to try to get myself straightened out. I missed a few meetings and whatever, so, and I know that the QSA is still in limbo. But in looking at the last sheet that came out on January the 13th, We had some land that was mentioned was followed, but not for IID purposes, and that was an average of about 25,000 acres, or 140,000 acre feet of water was not used. And at a $19 per acre foot, that would have been about $2.5 million. And then the new item that we picked up was that of idling. Water that was not used because the crops were in between and whatever, and there was a time period there, that averaged 60,000 acre feet over a year's time. And that meant that there was about 336,000 acre feet that wasn't used, but came into being in excess or whatever of our allotment. So we have about 476,000 acre feet that was not used. We have a deal with the MWD where they receive 100,000 acre feet due to their position as number 2 in the pecking order of water supply. They also have, by QSA, the ability to pick up whatever water is not used. And according to that report, that was a little bit over 240 million acre feet went to MWD by a QSA agreement. So we were looking at over 300,000 acre feet of water going to MWD. That exceeds the amount that we will be sending to San Diego when they reach their peak. And with all of those figures floating around, we lost about a little over $9 million by not having water going on to the fields at 19 bucks an acre foot. And John Pierre and Osias's statement of 1.9 mentioned a combination of 95,000 acre feet. One of them, somewhere or another, there was 16,000 acre feet
Orby, you have 1 minute.
conserved.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. Now, with those things in mind, we have been discussing different things, and when I say we, it's those of us that are out in the wander around coffee shops and whatever. We've kind of been keeping track of the rumors that were floating around. One of those rumors was that the IID would be taken over and a Trojan horse theory. And that is no longer a rumor. That is now a fact. Since Dr. Brady's enter into the program, 5 or 6 of the top titled people are personal appointees of his.
Okay, that's it. Thank you,
I
Mr.
think we
Hanks.
need to consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward at this time? If not, we will move on to director's comments, beginning with Director Hanks.
No comment.
Director Menville?
Yes, I have a couple of comments for board member comments. One of them deals with Cal ISO and Cal Energy and 8-Minute Energy. Director Hanks, I understand you have recently been participating in meetings that involve Cal ISO, Cal Energy, 8-Minute Energy, and Imperial County. I was not aware you were having these meetings. Can you explain to the board what is going on in these meetings? And did the full IID board authorize you to participate in these meetings?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that when I get to G3.
That's fine. Well, I got comments on G3 too.
Yeah. If I
And the
have
next
to-
one I have is
If I have to answer to you.
against, with David Nahad and Cal ISO. And Director Hanks, I understand that you've been talking to David Nahad about Cal ISO and IID transmission issues. Do you know that Mr. Nahad is working for one of the law firms that is suing the IID? And then Director Hanks, can you explain to the board what is going on with David Nahad? And did the full board authorize you to talk to David Nahad? Those are my comments.
You want me to answer these now? Now, I participated in a conference call with two developers, lobbyists in Sacramento concerning some regulatory issues. And I'd asked that staff be included in on it. I believe Mr. Koch was in on one and Mr. Keene on another. They can share with you about how much talking I do. I mainly listen. There are some regulations that are effectively blocking the development in Imperial County. And I think that should be a concern of everybody. I am in Division 3, where these projects are going on. I am their director up there. I am accessible. I did receive a phone call regarding legal service, whether we had attorneys, whether we were, who was representing us. And a matter of fact, I recommend that they call you, and I believe they did call you.
Well, Melissa McKeith called me. She's the
I
one
don't know.
suing us
I haven't
from
talked to.
QSA.
I haven't talked to Melissa McKee. I did not talk to Melissa McKee.
Well, you talked to David Nahad. On the meeting, the reason I bring this up is because on Wednesday, when I was coming back from Colorado River Board, I had a call from a reporter who said that he'd gotten a call that there was some meeting going on dealing with Cal ISO and IID Board and the county. And so I made a couple of calls, and I found out that there was a conference call going on. And then I further found out that, yes, Dr. Koch was involved in the meeting, but he had originally not been invited to come to the meeting. And
I
guess
haven't
maybe-
been to a meeting. I've been involved on a conference call. I'm going to tell you, Director Menville, you're the one that runs to the newspaper. You're the one that sicks them on me. They don't call me. Matter of fact, the items that I have of interest never seem to even be covered in the newspaper.
Well,
Okay.
I think what all I'm saying here, Director
You got a
Hanks, is
problem? Come and see me.
I have a problem that the
Step
full
up
board.
to the plate and be a man.
I have a problem that the full board is not informed about things that are going on.
You talk to developers all over all over the place. I'm not concerned about it.
Usually
Okay.
Mr. Koch or Mr. Jayan or somebody's involved in the meeting, and it's only as an introduction so they can talk to staff.
Well, this doesn't. You're trying to make this like I'm taking care of IID business. I'm trying to learn about regulatory issues that this board needs to be aware of, that I can bring it back and discuss it here. The newspaper did call me, and I recommend that they call staff. And staff asked me if I had any recommendation. I said from the very highest level, because the information that was passed on to whoever's at the newspaper, and I'll ask you, was it you? That called me and want to know what I knew. I didn't tell them what I knew. I just told them our staff is meeting with Cal ISO. We have strategic plans going on, talks going on, and I didn't think it was proper for me to discuss it at this time with a newspaper. And as far as what I knew that nobody else knows, I'm still trying to find out what that is.
Well, all I'm saying is these kind of discussions need to be brought to the board
This
level.
is just typical how you operate, Menville, and I'm tired of it.
No, it's that you have your way.
You got
of
a
operating, too.
problem with me,
Let's-
you know where
let's-
I'm
I
at.
don't have
Okay,
a problem.
let's-
I'm just making board member comments.
Gentlemen,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
go forward.
I'll
Thank
have
you
a
to both.
comment when you get through.
That's fine.
Director Desert. Comments, board comments?
No comments.
I have some comments. The March 15 meeting, which usually we meet at 5 p.m., with the consensus of the board, I would like to move that to 1 p.m. to allow the board members to attend the Energy Summit, which is going to be held that evening, starting that evening on the 15th. So with your approval, Ms. Rivera, would you move the meeting from 5 p.m. to 1 p.m., March the 15th? And then also, I'd like to ask Mr. Brady why he removed 3 items that I had, why he pulled 3 items from the agenda that I had specifically asked to be put on the agenda for discussion. One was the contract for Dennis Shinean. I had asked that to be put on the agenda. Also, the number 2, was the IRS penalty regarding one of the contract employees, the IID's failure to report the earnings.
Clerical error,
and
Correctly.
at that time, I'd asked what the penalty, the amount of the penalty, and Mr. Broking wasn't sure, did not respond because he wasn't sure of the amount. So I wanted an update on that. And then I also wanted an update on the recruitment for a water manager. And I had asked for these 3 items to be put on the agenda for discussion. And without consulting me, you removed them from the agenda.
Well,
I don't appreciate that because as a board member, any board member, we have, I believe that one of our duties is to put items on the agenda for discussion for the benefit of the district to conduct the district's business. And to remove the items without notifying me is unacceptable.
Well, ma'am, I don't believe I did remove those items under water general matters. Mr. Ross is prepared to talk about the water manager recruitment. And in a minute or two, whenever you ask me, under general manager's comments, I was going to indicate the IRS potential fine, the status of that, as well as included in your board packet is the information you requested about Mr. Chinaev's contract and report. That's included, and I was going to comment on that and field any questions. So from I apologize if you were looking for a specific item versus under general manager's.
I understand that I had asked to put these items on the agenda for discussion and at least have the courtesy to let me know if you're going to remove them from the agenda. From now on, Gloria, as president and also as the vice president, I would like for us to meet with you and Mr. Brady and whoever else puts the agenda together the day that you compile the items for the agenda to make sure that any requests that are forwarded by board members are left on the agenda and no one is omitted from their items.
I understand, and I do apologize for that. I did. Kevin Kelly, Gloria, and myself put that together, and I presume my discussions with Kevin on how we would put it into the agenda on general manager's comments and on water general matters was sufficient.
Well, I'm glad
I understand that.
Well, I'm glad you all knew because I didn't.
Well, I was assuming.
I'm just a board member. What do I know, right?
We'll improve on that.
Okay. Any other board member comments?
Yeah, I'd like for you to come back to this side of the aisle.
Oh, sure.
I'm starting to feel like I'm on the side of an aisle here. I just would like to point out to the public here that I am the board representative to the Imperial Valley Economic Development Committee. And there is a subcommittee, which I am not a part of, in the economic development called an Energy Committee. They are perplexed. They are confused. They are looking for solutions to the development of Imperial County, particularly with the renewable resources and our inability as a county to score a win in those areas. We have made progress with ORMAP, with one geothermal. We have one being developed in the Salton Sea Resource Area called Hudson Number 1, and with the PPA going east into Arizona. But there seems to be a blockage of getting power from the Imperial Irrigation District Balancing Authority area west into the major areas, which includes CalISO lines. And I'll just leave it there. Our staff is working on that. There's been great progress. I'm hoping to see a breakthrough. It's my understanding we do not fall under the guidelines of the CPUC. Is that correct?
Correct.
But almost all the investor-owned utilities do. And there are regulations developed by PUC that mainly deal with the investor-owned, but has an effect on us, particularly with new generators. Probably wasn't taken into consideration, and if it was, then it was probably intended to block us. And I brought up back in February about asking to form a task force to see if we could work through these things. And as far as talking with Melissa McKee, it's my understanding she talks to you.
No, I didn't say you spoke to
I know
Melissa
you didn't
McKee.
say that,
I
but
said she called me.
Do you want to admit to the people that you do talk to her?
I talk
and not
to a
just
lot of
on this
people,
occasion?
But I don't talk to them representing
Okay. And I
myself
don't-
as an IID
and-
director.
And I don't expect you to, and I don't expect you to ask for my permission. Thank you.
Comments from the general manager?
Yes, ma'am. On the issue of the fine by the IRS or potential fine, I'm informed by Mr. Broking's staff that that takes a month or two before they get back to you. It's on their timeline, not on ours, so we don't know. There was some conjecture that it might be as much as $2,000. It might be much less than that. It might be only a couple $100. But as soon as we find out, we'll get that back to you. As I mentioned, Mr. Chinaev's service agreement proposal and draft report, and I think there's a little bit of other material on there, was included in your package.
What did you finally end up paying him? How much for his services?
Whatever the 147, whatever the amount on the, at least that's the latest. And he was released in terms of the contract about a month and a half ago, maybe not, about a month and a half ago.
And he started in May of last year?
Yes, I think the contract was dated May 4th. I believe he started the next week, so mid-May.
Okay, so for 7 months, he got paid $147,000?
Over that period of time, including expenses. I believe his billing rate was $170 an hour.
And I read his report. It was a draft report dated August of 2010. Is that his report? That's his final report? That's all?
That was the draft report. That was in August. In September, October, my executive staff reviewed that, had discussions with Dennis on those issues. As I recall, by the end of October, we were getting ready to finalize that. We never finalized the report in that we were finishing up the budget. A lot of Chinaev's recommendations had to do with Mr. Kelly's area and how we might enhance our interaction with government agencies and the public. And as it stands right now, as I said, he's finished in terms of any additional work, and Kevin and I will be bringing that back to you, whatever recommendations we want to make to the full board. Some of those recommendations include board-level outreach as well as staff outreach.
Interesting that one of his recommendations was to put that gadget with the lights there.
Yes,
and
yes, ma'am.
I didn't charge you $170 an hour. That just came out. I'm like,
I understand.
director's mind to put those lights to limit the time that, like Mr. Hanks and Mr. Gonzalez, limit their time to 5 minutes. And I read his report, and there's not a lot of substance in his report, in my opinion. So, anyway, as one board member.
Yes.
So,
I have
anything else?
I have a few other things. One is you should have a letter in front of you that I sent out to our employees announcing the March of Dimes, March for Babies, that will be held March 26th. I'm the chair this year, March 26th at the Cattle Call Arena, and we've set a $40,000 goal. We've already had a couple of employees volunteer to be on the committee. I'm very excited about it. In the past, the Imperial Valley has raised on an annual basis somewhere between $50,000 and $20,000, and just like we did with, and really with a hand to Mr. Campbell, as we did with United Way, where we actually almost quadrupled last year, and we came pretty close this year too. I think we were just under 70,000. I think we can do a lot with the March of Dimes campaign as well. So we'll certainly let the board know more about that. And then, two more items. One is on Wednesday, last Wednesday, Greg Broking, Teresa Perez, Etta Jan, Olivia Ramirez, and myself gave presentations to Standard & Poor's and Moody's in San Francisco. Personally, I think they went very well. They're very well received. One of the things that we've been pushing very hard on is for an upgrade from Moody's. Everybody in the industry is pushing very hard. Moody's is very, very tight with their ratings right now, but we think it went well, and that's all in connection with, I believe, the item 14 that you're going to be looking at later on this afternoon. And the last thing is I received 28 days ago a request from Mr. Dan Johnson, and who works with Mr. Gary Jennings, regarding a groundwater remediation and exchange project. Mr. Garber has been working with I think it's one or the other of the gentlemen, on trying to craft something that we can bring to the board. I do think that it's incumbent upon staff to try and wrap this up with a recommendation to the board as quickly as possible, so that we're going to be bringing that to you on February 1st for some sort of board direction for us.
Good.
And that's all I have.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah.
Director Hanks.
On the last one that you mentioned, the wheeling, I know we've been working on that, but exchange, I'd like to know the upside downsides to that situation.
That is it, to my way of thinking, Director. That is the critical element in the whole.
Isn't that normally handled through water agencies?
Yes,
Okay.
That's why we need to be on very sure footing. And at this point, I will tell you, I am skeptical of working with a private individual that is not sponsored by another public agency. But anyway, we'll bring that back in 2 weeks.
Mr. Garber?
No comments, ma'am, and if I had some, judging by this afternoon, I think I'd just hold on to them till the next board meeting anyhow.
Chicken?
Director Desert?
Yes, I had a couple of questions about the IRS issue. The fine is potentially up to $2,000. What was the amount of the obligation?
Greg, do you have that number?
Generally, I have that.
Generally, that number.
Yeah. It's at this point, I'm not looking for a fine from the IRS. We have revised the one individual's W-2. We sent it out to him. In our letter, we asked that he respond in 30 days. If he responds in 30 days, then we will provide the assistance that was outlined in the letter, which was have an amended return filed for him. And I believe we would pay the tax penalty and interest associated with that, which I think is going to be somewhere around $2,000 total. and it may be less than that. That's providing the employee does respond and wants our assistance. If he doesn't want our assistance, then the district will not have to pay any of that. And so I don't believe that 30 days is run yet. We either issued that letter either right before or after Christmas. I can't really remember. So it'll be about the end of the month before the 30 days are up. And then we'll know more. It'll take another probably 3 or 4 weeks to get an amended return filed and figure out what that amount is. And as soon as we know, we'll bring it back to the board.
So the correction, the tax obligation, the correction is $2,000?
Well, I think it's, what I'm estimating, as I recall, I think it was around $2,000 additional income that had to be reported. So, there's a lot of assumptions going on my part because I'm not privy to the individual's tax return right now. But if you add in, taxes at 30 or 40% on the margin, maybe 10% on state, so you're paying 50% in tax, and penalty and interest is probably going to run less than 50% because it's less than 1 year out. So if the additional income is around 2,000, I don't think we'll go over the 2,000 number.
Thank you. And back to the Chenoweth idea, was he involved on the task force that Mr. Hanks referenced earlier? Did he work with you?
Dennis Chenoweth.
On which task force, excuse me?
For
On the permitting?
For permitting or with economic development?
I'd have to look back on my records, Mr. Hanks, whether Mr. Chenoweth. I think I'm pretty sure we had some discussions.
I noticed he had this discussion with Tim Kelly.
Well, we had quite a bit with Tim. Yes.
Yeah. On the Mr. Brooking, on the W-2s, on the service agreements, there was a 20,000 amendment to the external auditors for W-2 work. Was that on the other issues, other problems with W-2s, or?
Yes, that was from, trying to think the years, I think 6 and 7. There were some issues with W-2s in 6 and 7.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just a comment overall on the Chenoweth report. It just seems a little bit short in substance, as President Mendoza has mentioned.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, I'd like to, before we vote on the consent, I'd like to remove item number 4 for discussion, if I may.
Okay, move for approval without item 4.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second?
I'll
Please-
second that.
Please vote.
Okay, so item 4.
Moving on to item number 5, information, general matters, energy.
Yes, Madam President. I have one item. Back in July of 2010, Archon Energy proposed a hydrokinetic energy project to the board, which consisted of a canal-mounted floating 125 kW turbine that they wanted to be installed in the All-American Canal. Archon submitted a draft LOI for a review, and we informed them that we could not enter into any type of a letter of intent LOI until their project was approved by the Bureau. Archon said that they had contacted the Bureau of Reclamation as to the requirements and informed us that there were no requirements for the installation of the turbine. We followed up with the Bureau of Reclamation and found that there were a number of requirements, which included a land use permit, 11 sets of engineering drawings, environmental studies, a $200 fee, and, which is the only issue right now, the applicant must be a U.S.-based company, and Archon is a Canadian company. It also takes at least 120 days for the Bureau to review any proposal. We've been working with Archon, both ourselves and the General Counsel, to meet the requirements from the Bureau of Reclamation and the district, and Tina Shields has also been invaluable in this. We've identified a proposed site, which is about a mile west of Drop 1, and last week, staff, our water department, began taking readings of the water velocity. I had always thought that water flowed at a constant velocity. I'm obviously wrong, but then I don't track water very closely. Archon must create a U.S. Business status of some kind. We've requested the financials for Archon for review by risk management. And once all that is done, Archon is going to come down and has actually begun engineering here in the canal, preliminary engineering, subject to the district entering into an LOI with them. The size of this, each turbine is about 125 kW. They're proposing putting 4 or 5 turbines in a line sequentially, series, with the potential of getting up to, they hope, 1 megawatt. I would be very surprised if it ever got that big. That's all that I have.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board? Director Hanks?
Yeah, I've got a question. On the conference call that we were talking about, resource adequacy seems to be an issue.
Yes, sir.
Can you have Steve Keene circle back and give us an update on what the concern is and maybe get us all up to speed on that? Because I'm not so sure, regardless of the accusation, whether I'm up to speed on it.
Mr. Keene has prepared a list of all the people that we've been talking to at the PUC, CEC, Cal ISO, FERC, and the concerns that the various generators here within our district have. Yes, we're prepared at the board's pleasure to put it on the agenda and discuss it.
Would February 1st be soon enough?
Yeah.
I mean, that's already,
That would be
okay.
good.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. All right. That's all you have, Dr. Cook? Okay. Moving on to item number 6, update on San Juan Generating Station Unit 3. Mr. Zavala?
I got asked by Dr. Koch to put a presentation of the San Juan Generating Station. And it's one of my assignments is to totally look at what all the impacts are at San Juan. And so we're going to briefly give you a brief overview for new directors that are on the board, and at the same time, we signed a confidentiality agreement, so we're trying to give as much information to you and the public as possible.
Mr. Zavala, you look very nice.
Thank you. You do too.
Thank you.
San Juan plant is a 4-unit plant for a combined energy output of about 1,800 megawatts. The plants were built between 1973 to 1982. The plant was built adjacent to a La Plata coal mine, so there is no transport of fuel. It's right next to the plant. All the units are coal-fired units. Unit 3, which is IID's interest, is a 488 megawatt unit. It was built in 1979. It's a 32-year-old plant. In 1993, we entered a power purchase agreement with through SCAPA for 41.8% of energy, which equates to 204 megawatts. Of those 204 megawatts, IID's power purchase portion of the Unit 3 is 104 megawatts, or 51% of what SCAPA entered an agreement to. SCAPA purchased also ownership of the plant, and that was 41.8% for $190.7 million. IID purchased payments exceed $43 million per year. And the debt service of those $197.7 million will terminate in 2020. We took a look at the cost of energy. In 2006, San Juan plant went through a $320 million environmental upgrades. And you're going to see that those cost impacts, and from 2006 to 2010, you can see that the costs are rising from the San Juan plant from the $40 megawatt to the $60 megawatt. When you start looking at those prices, it has become more expensive than the natural gas fired generation if we build a new plant today. We also looked at the operating history. How well is it being operated? And as you can see, in the last 3 years, we haven't been doing too well. We've had two plant outages, as you can see, in March and April of 2008, and we have had another plant outage in 2010, and that impacts the equivalent availability factor. The equivalent availability factor is a factor that demonstrates how much is the unit available to produce 100% power. Okay, so you can see the yearly average below there, 68%, 87 in 2009, and 63. We wanted to compare it as well to the other units. How well the other units are being operated is this Unit 3 specifically. As you can see, the average of all 4 units, you're looking at 79% for Unit 1, 74% for Unit 2, and 72% for Unit 3, and 84%. So we're looking at more impacts on our unit. For all large coal-fired plants, capacity factor is around 87%, but this does not adjust for impacts of different environmental technologies. Units with SCR should have lower operating efficiencies and higher cost. And this is a supporting slide that I put in there just so that you can see, because we wanted to compare it to other coal plants of equal size. How's it doing across the United States? And as you look at that supporting slide there, it's Unit 3 is 84%, and when we look at it in the industry, it's 82.97. So we're doing a little bit more than average. If you had to grade it, we're operating around a C+. What are the issues? The coal contract expires in 2017. New contract should result in lower price of coal, hence lower energy prices. As you know, throughout our nation, we've been trying to go to green energy, and that makes coal least desired. And so when you look at the debt payments, they'll end in 2020. So the annual $9 million that we pay each year, those costs will drop out. The EPA preliminary BART determination has just come out, and they are requiring for the San Juan plant to install SCRs. So we took a look at that to see how much those are. We're looking around $288 million for Unit 3. If you look at its proportion, you could see that we could result in an additional $40 to $56 million in capital that put over a debt service over 10 to 15 years. We're looking at about $3 or $4 million per year in total project cost. Some of the alternatives that we've been looking at, pay and continue operations as a coal plant. Costs will rise in short term as the cost of the SCRs is added, but then declines as coal contracts renegotiate and debt service ends.
Excuse me, Mr. Zavala, as you say coal contracts, are you looking at clean coal or cleaning the coal, or just not? Can coal be cleaned? I think we had this conversation once before. Yeah. There's no such thing as clean coal, right? All right.
What what they look at and what we're looking at, different mines have different purities. And so when we look at a better coal to burn, we look at the cleaner coal type, I guess, per se. But really to say we can clean coal up, it's not.
Well, according to the TV commercials, there is clean coal.
Does that cleaner coal supply exist on site?
No.
So they would have to truck it in?
That's
freight it
correct.
in.
They would build a rail spur.
How far off-site is it?
Depends on who they negotiated the new contracts with.
So the advantage of being on-site with the San Juan facility, there's no advantage if we move to the cleaner coal supply?
When you're talking about coal costs are relatively inexpensive, even on-site, as the La Plata mines are. There's still a railroad to move coal back and forth from the mine mouth to the plant. And without looking, it would not surprise me to find that even moving it around the yard, the transportation costs are greater than the underlying coal cost. It would not surprise me.
Okay.
David, the debt service you said is $43 million a year?
No, that's what we pay entirely for O&M, the debt service, all combined.
Okay, and then so the $9 million a year figure is just to
the
pay
debt
off our
service.
financial note.
Yes.
David, before you go much further, you mentioned that the purchase ownership by SCAPA was 190 million. Of that was our share comparable to the purchase power percentage?
Yes.
Roughly, a little over half of it is
You have to take the 2% into consideration.
okay.
And David, when they did the upgrades in 2006, did risk management or someone take a look at it to figure out how far in the future those upgrades were going to carry us? Or was it the laws in effect at that time to let us know how far we could then run with San Juan?
It was their first step to try to improve their environmental concerns because, as you know, the whole nation was moving to more environmental safe type of fuels. And so what they did in their first run, they tried to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions by 35%, collect 99+% of fly ash and particulates, remove 90+% of sulfur dioxide, and eliminate 85% of mercury emissions. That was their first approach. But the EPA kept on increasing their standard.
And the expense of those upgrades in 2006 for the whole facility was
$320 million.
And our percentage of that was
When you got to take.
It was about $65 million for
65
Unit
million.
3. Now, remember that this is the recommendation by EPA to install SCR, selective catalytic reduction, is a preliminary finding that was issued about 3 weeks ago. P&M does not agree that these units need the SCRs based upon the work that was done to bring it up to current speed, the work that was done in 2006, 2007.
Who doesn't agree?
P&M, Public Service New Mexico is the plant manager and majority owner. SCAPA, APS, Tucson, SRP all pay P&M to manage their share of the plant. Then we, in our case SCAPA, pays P&M whatever the operating costs of our plant are, prorated out, plus any common facilities charges associated with the plant. And what SCAPA does, each year a budget is prepared based upon an estimated operation of the plant. So P&M comes out and says, we think the plant's going to run this well in January, this well in February, this well in March, this well in April. We're taking it out of service for 2 weeks in May, back in for the rest of the summer. That creates an annual budget. We will then pay the annual budget even if the plant shuts down on January 1st to December 31st. Okay, so there's an energy component in that annual budget, there's a debt component, and there's an O&M component. So when the plant runs less than anticipated, our costs go up very substantially because SCAPA is going to charge us for it. And SCAPA is just protecting essentially the debt service. Now, at the end of the year, they'll go back and reconcile based upon the amount of energy or the variable costs that are associated with it. But we will always pay that debt cost. But SCAPA, not having any source of income other than the PPA revenue from ourselves, is going to collect that money regardless.
Okay.
The second option, the alternative
Excuse me,
that they're-
Director Hanks, or you want to
I'll wait till you
Okay.
finish.
All right, continue, Mr. Zavala.
Thank you. Is to convert the units to natural gas. Costs will rise due to capital investment required by participants will receive monetary benefits from greenhouse gas emissions reductions and a fixed cost of natural gas. The emissions go to about 1/3 of what coal puts out. Decommissions, some or all the units participants would receive greenhouse gas emissions credits but still have to pay existing debt service. SCAPA is also studying and modeling to see different alternatives other than those three to see what's the best benefit for IID.
We should also point out there that IID is the largest participant in SCAPA, is SCAPA's project manager on the facility. And so it is IID staff that's leading the studies on behalf of SCAPA. SCAPA has also contracted with Navigant. One other participant in particular did not want us leading the studies by ourselves, so they went out and studied, decided to spend the money to hire an outside consultant in addition to the staff. But right now it's...
Say that again?
One of the other SCAPA participants did not want IID staff to be leading the studies. Can you get?
I won't even guess.
Who was that?
So recommending it on our part is, we're running the studies on our part is Scott Hardy, yes, Noe Gutierrez, and David Zavala.
Steiger.
Okay, go on.
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I didn't mention
Sidebar over here.
I didn't mention Mr. Steiger's name. On looking at switching over to natural gas, okay, SCAPA is doing some work on the cost benefit analysis, and it's my understanding from some friends in that neighborhood that it virtually sets on a natural gas field. Is that correct? Do you know?
Gas is available within 25 miles directly from the supply.
Okay. Have we looked at any negotiations to see what we could get a supply for or a long-term supply?
We are looking into all those avenues.
Okay.
We should have a recommendation by the entire team in the month of May. There's a special task force that meets every Tuesday, trying to push all the studies and bring all the documentation forward so that we can model, so you can see the performance of each scenario.
Well, with the coal plant, is it just a matter of time for California just shuts us off from bringing any power?
Well, we're already shut off from bringing in new coal. You can enter contracts for baseload energy up to 4 years, 11 months without going through, I don't remember the bill, SB 2679? 2678. I'm looking out here at the audience hoping for help, but we cannot bring it in dirty resources, fossil fuel resources for baseload requirements at this point. So yes, California has already shut us off in that sense. And we're finding some interesting things in the marketplace where companies like Edison are selling their coal rights to APS so that the plant can be shut down because the emission credits are of more value to the utilities right now than keeping a coal plant up and operating.
It's crazy right now.
You said SCAPA has administration over the plant, or?
SCAPA is the actual owner. So SCAPA purchased the plant, but it got the money by entering into take-or-pay contracts with each of the participants.
Well, what about the physical maintenance and operations of the plant?
That is, P&M is the project manager, and IID is responsible for overseeing, for watching, or being on the various committees on behalf of SCAPA. So if there's a management committee meeting, Mr. Zavala would be going on behalf of SCAPA, although SCAPA always sends somebody else. But IID should have been, for the last decade, representing SCAPA at these various meetings. To my knowledge, until about 2.5 years ago, IID was not participating on behalf of SCAPA. But if you can go back to the cost,
Here's a
to the
here's a slide of the team that Dr. Koch is talking about. David Koch sits on the SCAPA board, and the operating committee, which I sit on, and then we have on the fuels committee Noah Gutierrez, and the EO committee Wayne Lane. And each of these committees have a ability to approve up to $500,000, and the operating committee approves everything above that.
Well, I think Dr. Cloak asked you a question to go back to what slide did you say?
Slide, would you
the
like
one
to go
that,
to?
slide 3, the cost of energy.
Slide 3, okay. Here we go.
You're doing good, Mr. Zavala.
Right here, this is good. It says slide 3 on mine, and slide 3 there. But if you notice, IID's power supply budget for the last few years has been $210 million. Yet we're paying, in rough terms, $50 million for roughly 20%, 25%. Round figures, it's slightly lower than this, but round figures. 25% of our energy costs are going to San Juan. This is an incredible amount of our total power supply budgets going to a single coal plant that we had no particular oversight over, particularly when it's only providing about 18 to 20% of our annual energy requirements. I mean, that's a lot, but we simply weren't watching this plant. So we decided that it was worthwhile to assign people and fulfill our obligations both to ourselves and to the rest of the SCAPA participants by becoming much more involved in the oversight of the plant. And there have been other issues with the plant. If there's no oversight, then Public Service New Mexico does what it wants to do. It's not to say it's doing it wrong. P&M has a very large financial stake in the operation of this plant itself. But what's good for Public Service New Mexico may not be good for the SCAPA participants nor IID.
Well, on the maintenance and operation, how would you classify that? Have they done a good job keeping it up, or?
I don't believe so. If you go back, or if you go forward to the next slide, or the next two slides, on comparison history, Mr. Zavala is correct. If you run this over 5 or 6 years, the plant operates fairly close to norm, slightly less, but nothing horrible. But when you look at the last 2 or 3 years, I think that the facility has not been operating particularly well, primarily as a result of integrating some of the environmental work that's being done with it. Dave, do you have any?
I have a slide here that shows you the history, because when we looked at 3 years, we really wanted to see how was it doing 10 years from now in the past. And you can see it right here. It's a supporting slide. It was doing much better. It's about 87%, average about 87%. So the plant has been operating much better in the past. It's been operating not too good in this last few years. 3 or 4 years.
And one reason is the financial troubles that P&M has had since 2003, 2004. I am not criticizing P&M, okay, so don't, I'm taking this as just a statement that when an entity has internal financial problems, one of the easiest things to start cutting is the operation and maintenance of jointly owned facilities. SCAP is concerned about it, I'm concerned about it, but it doesn't mean that P&M is doing a bad job. It's just I wish that that the plant was operating better.
I've got one more question. On transmission cost, is that a significant factor in this too? Or?
Actually, no, sir. The planned output is delivered under an agreement with Salt River Project to Palo Verde, where it's picked up on our SWIPL, share of SWIPL. So we bring it in from Palo Verde down through North Gila area into IV substation. One of the things that Mr. Montano found out when he began looking at the contracts 2 years ago was that SRP had been charging us incorrectly for the last decade. Unfortunately, when we determined that they were billing us incorrectly, it's that they weren't billing us enough.
Oh, shit.
So.
Too bad.
Contracts have to be followed, whether they're for your good or your bad. We follow the contracts. So we're in negotiation with them to fix it. It's a very small amount each year, but it's something that needs to be cleaned up. But again, nobody had really looked at it for 10 years. We're fulfilling our duties as the project manager.
Do we dare ask Mr. Zavala what his recommendation is?
That's your choice, sir.
My recommendation would be to continue through the studies and do the performance and the risk analysis and to see what is going to be the best payback for our ratepayer.
So how much more time do you anticipate going through all these analysis and come back with a recommendation?
The Special Task Force is shooting to have a recommendation by in the month of May,
And then,
Which all that means is that's when people like me are going to have a chance to start looking at it. So I'd be very surprised if it comes back before July.
so you're talking maybe the end of the year or something like that?
Not that late. Decisions are going to have to be made before that. The EPA is going to hold, now remember, there is a preliminary recommendation or preliminary order from EPA to install the SCRs on the units. That's $600 to $1 billion. That's for all 1,800, all 4 units.
So how much is it again?
For all 4 units, it's $600 to $1 billion. Okay, but remember, our share is 30 to 50 million of it. Okay, the others pay the rest. And I say our share, SCAPA's share will be there. They will just allocate that in debt service through us. We won't have to raise debt for it. SCAPA will have to. And then SCAPA will turn around and charge us that additional monthly rent and the monthly energy cost. So you would see the monthly energy cost increase from roughly $83 per year, $83 per megawatt hour, to $90 or $91 per megawatt hour to make up the additional.
Has anyone on the board been to look at that?
Yeah, I was going to mention that when Lloyd Allen was on the board, we took a trip back to look at the mine. And have you been back to the San Juan mine?
I have
Dr.
been
Cole?
at too many coal plants.
It's worth a trip to go back and look at it. I would
Oh,
recommend.
it's very interesting.
That,
If a couple of board members
but
would
would
like to
like
do
Well,
that.
is it very close to when they have the water meeting at Bishop's Lodge? Is it?
oh, no, this
It's
is in
not
Four
close, huh?
Corners.
This
no.
is at Four Corners.
Four
Four
Corners.
Corners, no, it's not even close.
Doesn't somebody have a video on it? There must be some sort of video on it.
It might
boys.
be. We can check on that.
I'm sure the Sierra Club has quite a few videos of it. It is considered the most polluting coal-fired plant in the Southwest.
David, you've been there to see it, right?
No, they're actually setting a tour up for me.
Okay.
Yeah, they take
Did they
you
tell
down.
you you had to take your own tent? If it's at Four Corners, you better take your own tent.
Yeah,
Watch out there.
actually, that you go down, when we took the tour, and with Director Allen, we actually went down to the very bottom when they do the actual mining, and surprisingly, they had women working also, and it's hard work, and it's heavy work, and they actually had women working in the mines. So it's interesting that, bless you, that you want to arrange for a tour. I think I would recommend for you all to go see it.
Coal plants just have a tendency to destroy whatever clothes you're wearing that day, so.
Oh, they give you protective gear and clothing and so forth, so you'll be okay.
So that's why you want me to go, huh? What does it do to your lungs, huh?
For smokers, I think
Oh,
it's
that's-
clean air.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Zavala, anything else?
The only thing else that I can add, as you saw the nation's politics
Okay.
change through our country. Governor Ramirez is pro-coal, so she's already removed the Environmental Information Board and placed her with her own people. She's trying to reverse the SCR issues, so she wants to keep people working. It's a 400 and something employee plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep your eye on Virginia. They had a big blow up over there.
Same thing.
Coal mine's been shut down.
Okay.
That's all.
David, how far into the future until we would have to implement SCR, regardless of what the New Mexico is saying?
We're looking about 2-3 years from now.
And then if we implement SCR, then what's the useful life of the facility as we move forward into the future?
EPRI has said as long as we continue to do the maintenance, there's at least 20 more years of the plant. 20 to 30.
That becomes the problem, Director, that you invest this, the costs go up, but then we see two ratchets down as the coal costs decline and the debt service comes down, and then we have a plant that can operate for 20 years, hopefully at a attractive rate, hopefully. But there's still no such thing as clean coal, regardless of the coal industry.
And did we get a cost? Was there a dollar value for the cost of switching it over to natural gas?
We can't answer that in open session yet. There's
Good question. And David, the debt service, the strictly debt service is $9,000 a month annually if we shut it down.
$9 million per
9
year.
million
Per year.
excuse me. And did we have any valuation as to what those emission credits would be worth from that 21% of Unit 3 if we mothballed it and shut it down?
Not from New Mexico side. Looking at California side, I think they were looking like $20
$20 to $25 per ton.
Of CO. And how many tons of CO?
Yeah, you have basically one ton of CO per megawatt hour. So we're producing on the order of 30,000 to 40,000 megawatt hours. You're looking at 30 to 40,000 carbon equivalents.
So you're looking at $700,000, a one-time payment of $700,000 if you're able to sell them for the CO credits?
No, that's annual
Annual.
basis, but that I think it's more than that. It's probably more like $10 million a year. with ours.
If we mothballed it and shut it down, we would have credit of $10 million a year potentially.
Still have to pay it.
It is an option.
And then we're looking at a
But
debt.
remember, we cannot shut it down by ourselves.
Right.
Okay, we cannot walk away from it. It is not our plant. This is something that has to be decided in conjunction with all the SCAPA entities. No one entity can decide what they're going to do.
Well, most of the California SCAPA entities would most likely be in the same fishbowl as us. Can each unit stand alone on if you repower it, or if you put SER, or if you mothball it? Does each unit stand alone, or does the whole facility run together?
No, each of the units can stand by themselves. So if, for example, one of the SCAPA participants decided that it wanted to shut down, just shut down, and it was able to find enough of the other participants to shut down, to come to 500 megawatts, then they could shut down that one particular plant or one particular unit. But there are some very interesting aspects in that the cost per unit are very, very different. So shutting down Unit 1 is a whole lot different than shutting down Unit 4 or Unit 2. That's why the analysis is just, it's not an easy subject.
Yeah, well, we're locked into Unit 3. And what you're saying is Unit 1 is probably the oldest facility, and if you mothballed it, you get the most bang for your buck on the emission credits.
But if we in Anaheim and somebody else decided to shut down a unit, if we came up with 500, then it would be possible that you shut down one and then reallocate costs. Our costs would not go away until 2020 at the earliest.
But you would get the most bang for your buck on the emissions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Not?
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Moving on to item number 7, water, general matters. Mr. Ross?
Yes, just a couple of short items. One is you'd asked the question about the status of the recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
We have retained the services of Alliance, the recruiting firm. We had a conference call with them about a week ago with personnel to kind of let them know the types of things that we would expect from this person and this position, and give them some thoughts and ideas on some of the publications and stuff that they could advertise it in, trying to broaden it through the Southwest a bit so that we could get people hopefully with some experience in this area that would be somewhat familiar with some of the Colorado River issues and the like. So we're hopeful to have a slate of potentials anyway, and maybe in the next couple of months.
And the recruiting will take place for how many weeks? You're talking about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or?
Well, they're saying they'll have a list of candidates for us within a couple of months. It kind of depends on the type of response they get from the ads and the quality of the applicants that they get. So once we have a good list of quality applicants, then we'll sit down and start talking to them.
Thank you.
And,
at least the way Alliance does it, they usually go a 6-week period of recruitment that they're advertising actively, and then that's why it's 8 to 9 weeks by the time they finish up.
Right.
Okay.
The other item is that there's going to be a water forum this Thursday. Our staff is heading that up. Tina Shields is orchestrating it. It's going to be at the San Diego Gas and Electric Conference Center in El Centro from 9 to 11:30 a.m. in the morning. If you have any questions about it, Tina's here and she could answer them for you.
It's a water
forum, part of our regional water planning efforts. IWRP.
I have a question.
Yes.
I would, Tina, if there's any way, like on the February the 1st meeting, if maybe we could kind of have an update on what's going on with that, just kind of bring the board up to speed on what's the meetings are doing, the progress, and where we're at on everything.
Sure, and we're still waiting for the grant award from late December to be finalized so that we have confirmation of that $1 million funding effort.
Board just needs to be brought up to speed.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Mr. Ross, Symbol Mineral Recovery will be needing some water for their operation. I think it's only about 150 acre foot a year. Who do we refer them to?
They would talk to Tina and I believe, and I might be mistaken, but I believe I have spoken to them and given them a lay of the land at one point. It was a while ago.
This is for a contract?
Okay.
Yeah, I went through the process.
And what about power they'll need?
That's not me.
I think 3-phase.
Yeah, now you've got to go back to Mr. Koch.
We only have hydroelectric and water.
I have not talked to them about a particular plant.
Pardon?
They have not talked to me about
No, they
retail
sent me a message, want to know who to meet with to talk about.
Well, that would be one of my people, either me or Mario, depending upon.
Well, I'll just tell them one of your people.
Tell them me, sir.
Okay. All right.
Okay, that's it, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, page 22 on your agenda. Mr. Remington, Environmental Regulatory and Emergency Planning Supervisor, update on quagga mussel and canals. We have him in the canals now?
I'm learning. Good afternoon, board members. I'm Michael Remington, Supervisor for Environmental, Regulatory, and Emergency Planning. Giving you an update on the quagga mussel. That's another invasive species. My section, besides looking at all the environmental stuff for whatever water energy project to make sure we're in compliance, we also do other duties as assigned, and this is one of them, an invasive species. Matter of fact, in 81, when I came to the district, my job was to work on controlling the other invasive aquatic plant, hydrilla, that clogged over 400 miles of our canals. And we came up with the triploid grass carp, which is still used to maintain all the canals to prevent any aquatic weeds. So this is a little background of where it all started in the Great Lakes. First with zebra mussel in the 70s. Quagga mussel showed up. Most of these invasive mussels came from the ballast water from cargo ships and everything into the Great Lakes from Europe. They traveled through the system down into the Mississippi, and back in 2007, you can see they moved over into the western United States. Mainly transport probably in the bilge area of recreational fishing boats that came from the Great Lakes or Mississippi or some of the other places and got here toward the Colorado River. In order to monitor what's happening, we've set up essentially 8 sampling sites along the All-American. On your right, you can see we first started at Imperial Dam, the desiltation basins, the head gate of the All-American, the Gila Gravity Canal head gate, Pilot Knob, Drop 1, Central main turnout, and the West Side main turnout. And our samplers are essentially plastic plates or pipes with anchored down with a cinder block. And we pull them up on a monthly basis, inspect them for the mussel to see the population. This is since 2008. Here's a graph of the population that we found on the samplers. The high peaks are different than what was predicted. The biologists who have been working on this in the Great Lakes predicted that, and even our biologists in California predicted that, well, they're very abundant in cooler waters. They thought that our hotter water temperatures would prevent them from reproducing. They also felt that the silt amount in our canals would foul their intake tube for feeding, and they wouldn't get really bad. They've gotten really bad in Lake Mead and Lake Havasu and getting on to the gratings and everything else on the gates and the hydro dams. Here you can see the most we've had is a little over 60 individuals on a plate, usually during the summer months. Nothing really to report, and it drops back down. So we're not really seeing an outbreak, and It just peaks during the summer and then drops back down. Now, during those summer months, they probably are reproducing, and what they do is shoot out millions of young veligers, which are the swimming and floating larvae stages that go downstream, and then they anchor onto something solid. Whether that's occurring to a point in our piping systems, like at the hydro drops within the cooling system, we don't know. We just have to measure and see if the flow is restricted at all. In 2009, we did a risk assessment. We looked at all of these things to see what are the potentials for fouling our system. Everything from the Senator wash to the drops, cooling systems, automated gates, any pipelines, and other features. And based on that risk assessment, this is the update. We continue to monitor. Based on the data you saw on that graph, I think we're going to drop back our sampling to only May through October instead of every month. The winter time is not worth sending staff out to just pick up one or two. And we've never had any on any of the samplers of the West Side Maine. So even though they may be getting down through the All-American, at least to Central Maine, the populations aren't high enough to really warrant that kind of effort. We continue coordinated with the other staff out there in the water department and the hydro drops to during maintenance outage to look at everything to see if we have any quagga mussels. We provide training to staff to see what they should be looking for. And I think until we really see that there's a potential threat to our system, we will then depend on water and energy to come up with potentially some kind of contingency funding for enhanced cleaning or whatever we need to do. I don't think the technology to try to exclude them from the system is cost effective right now based on the populations we have. So that's where we are.
How much has your department spent on the mussels to this point?
Well, I'd have to go back and see they only go out once.
Just a round number.
Maybe about, since 2007, maybe about 10, 15,000.
Yeah, okay.
Just in staff time,
Yeah.
those samplers, if we have to replace some material, and just going out there, that's about it.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Questions or comments from Mr. Remington?
Just one other is up the river and, Hoover and other areas, and they're getting into MWD's aqueduct and et cetera. Are other people having more serious problems than we're having with this issue?
Well, yes, they're having to increase maintenance and cleaning on some of the gates and things like that. Some of the water cooling systems at Hoover and I think at Parker Davis, they may be actually, I haven't heard anything of, but they've investigated a intake filtering system that they may install to filter out those veligers from getting into their water system. But other than that, I don't know of what's being. They also were investigating various type of paint compounds and everything else that were toxic to the mussels to put on these gates and things to prevent them. But there's still research going on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9, page 30 on your agenda, internal auditors, general matters. Mr. Kaiser's not here.
Yes, he's just delegated me.
Where is he?
In the back.
Oh, you're in the back. You're hiding. Didn't see you. Oh, okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. There's an item we'd like to report on the general matters. If you remember back on October 12, 2010, the board instructed the general manager and responsible staff, respectively, to grant internal audit view all access in SAP system. Of course, since then we worked on with staff, with representative from legal and IT. We want to report that the HR module, which was the most sensitive area, we we had to block out some information and yet have access to other information. It is done. We tested it, and so that part is done. There's several other modules which we think it's going to be much easier to grant access of what we don't have yet. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions, comments from the board? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, page 31 in your agenda. Director Hanks, governance policy number G3, official communications.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it might be beneficial to us to consider adding to this policy some type of referral to a communication person on issues that we know that we're in negotiations on, or might be considered a strategic planning discussion. If we should have someone appointed that we could refer to.
Well, can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
I thought you did a pretty damn good job of it a while ago. I had a phone call from Mr. Roller regarding resource adequacy. He didn't call that. He just had overheard a conversation, or someone had told him about a conversation that took place, and that I was aware of a problem that existed that was potentially keeping our energy from being transported out. And I didn't want to mislead him. I didn't want to give more information than what I should, and I felt kind of uncomfortable in that position. But I think it might be helpful that we have a designated person on some of these items.
Well,
you know, I find it kind of ironic that the only time I get calls from the newspaper are issues that maybe someone's trying to set me up on. So,
you know, Director
I'll
Hanks.
throw that in there.
Yeah,
Well, I got a comment on
Yeah.
that. I get calls from a newspaper because I make myself available for one thing,
Yeah,
as an
you
IID
run
director.
down there, too.
And for a second thing, I return calls that I get from a newspaper because I know the IV Press or Mr. Roller or whoever the reporter is at the time has an article that they have to write because they've been assigned to the IID. So I try to give them an honest answer. And, you know, it may be my personal opinion as an IID board member on what's going on, or the knowledge that I have from being involved about the issue, but I don't think I say that I'm speaking for the whole board. I'm speaking as one IID board member. I'm giving my personal opinion on it. And if there's some people out in the public that get offended by some things that I may say, whether it's the bond issue, dealing with Foster Morgan, and they don't like what I'm having to say about them raising the electrical rates, cost us another 80 to 120 million. That's my prerogative. I'm an elected official. I've been elected by the public. When the public doesn't like me anymore, they can throw me out at the next election. And I think I choose my words carefully, and I think I have a right to speak to the paper when they call. And if I have a question that I'm not sure about, I've quite often called Kevin Kelly, and he can verify that. And it's to make sure that I'm representing what I say in a proper context that puts IID in good light as to what I'm saying. If I have another question, I can call Mr. Koch about an IID issue, or Brian Brady about an overall issue, or even Mr. Ross if it comes to a water issue. So, and I've told the reporters that I will call you back. Can I call you back in 30 minutes? Can I call you back in an hour? What's your deadline to meet the story, and et cetera? So.
Well, Director Hanks, what
Well,
is your intention?
I got my answer. I'll just have him call Director Menbell.
Fine, they call me all at my phone's on, except when I go to bed.
Hold on.
He can speak for all of us.
No. What this policy, how I understand this policy to the message of this policy is that any one board member can speak to the media as that one board member. I get calls from the newspaper, and when I answer the questions, I answer as one board member. I'm not speaking for the full board, because that's not my role. I give my opinion as one board member.
But why is it if I answer anything, why is it always considered that I'm speaking for the whole board?
Who said that?
That's what you just said.
No, I said I didn't refer to a newspaper article you were talking about.
Right.
I asked you about a meeting that you were in that the board didn't know about, dealing with energy issues, whether it's Cal ASO, you were meeting with Cal Energy, or you're meeting with 8 Minute Energy.
I just got an email while I was sitting here, and the question I asked about Symbol Water and Power. They want to know who to contact. Okay, now do I have to inform you that I have a meeting with them?
My responsibility as a board member, and Mr. Koch can tell you this, or even Mario or Mr. Ross, if there's energy questions, water questions, I refer them to Mr. Koch or Mario, or call and ask them who should I forward the email to or whatever. I try to work with staff as much as I can to get the job done and keep the IID business moving forward.
I think that the issue here is that at any time, each of us 5 board members get calls from the public, whether it's a developer or a school or a city, and they have questions or they have an issue, and they call the director that they know the most, they feel more comfortable with, or the director that represents them in their division. And they call and they ask them, can you help me resolve this issue that I have? And that director, because it's his or her responsibility, will direct that person to the proper staff person. And I think that's okay to do that. And I think that's what all the 5 directors have been doing. And I don't have an issue with that. And I don't think Director Hanks has an issue with that. And we're going to get those requests all the time, because we're all elected from the whole valley. So, Director Hanks, I don't know how you want to change this policy.
Well, obviously, any communications I have with the public out there seems to be challenged, seems to be an issue.
Now,
so tell me what the rules are. Give me some clarification. If not, get out of my way.
Director Hanks, as one director to another director, you have every right to speak to the public. You have every right to talk to developers, to try to move the district forward. I don't have an issue with that. Just like Director Menville has that right, and so does Director Desert. I don't have a problem with that, and it shouldn't be any of my business anyway.
Thank you.
So, do we go to the next item on the agenda, or
Sure.
what?
I'm fine.
All right, now, we're going to, the next
number-
item is
Item 10.
governance policy G7, board actions and decisions. Is this the same one, or?
Yeah, there was some issues that came up with some of the service agreements, and in most public agencies, there's a register of warrants that come forward for approval just as a consent item. It's not intent on micromanaging, it's just to keep us informed. And on page 2, Part C, approval or rejection of any contract or expenditure. I just thought it'd be helpful in some of these if we knew ahead of time whether the registers are made available here or whether it's somewhere else at the business office or somewhere. If we want to go look at it, we'd have that opportunity.
Well, just about every other place I've been, whether I've been on the board or reported to a board, we did have a regular warrant, just the monthly payments to everybody. And this actually is the first place that we haven't had that. So if the board would like that, let me ask Mr. Broking, that's not a big, that's pretty routine, and if that's useful.
Mr. Broking? I know that when I served in the city of Brawley as a council member, we would acknowledge all the warrants on a monthly basis.
Yeah, it was a receive and file or acknowledgement or whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, we can get you a list of all the checks and all the wire transfers for the month.
On a month.
Sure. Would that at
No,
least,
that'd be good.
that'd be a good start anyway.
Yeah,
and
just that way, if
that-
there's,
Make
if
it
there's any
public.
question, it comes up, we have a chance to
Sure,
ask
sure.
them, not a year later or whatever. Okay. Thank you.
More public we are, the better off we are.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item number 11, page 36, Desert Research and Extension Center Farm Smart funding. Please make me smart. Who is here?
Jennifer gets it.
Jennifer Goodsell.
Good afternoon, President Mendoza, members of the board. I'm here to let you know that instead of Nancy Kaywood, Deborah Driscoll, the business officer for the Desert Research and Extension Center, is
We
here
were wondering
to
who you were.
say a few words and answer any questions you might have in regards to this item.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Is there discussion?
Nice work.
I don't have to
Please
say
vote.
a thing then, huh?
Please vote. Thank you. You got your money.
Can I just say thank you very much on behalf of the Farm Smart program and all the children of Imperial Valley who attend our program. Thank you very much for your sponsorship.
It's a
Guys
good
do a
program.
great job
and
with it.
We're happy to support it. Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, page 38 on your agenda.
Mr. Kelly.
Sponsorship of Imperial and Riverside County Fairs. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, President Mendoza, members of the board, in keeping with the policy of the Community Involvement Committee, any individual item that we recommend funding to comes before this board if it exceeds $5,000. So the committee is recommending that that your board approve sponsorship of both the Imperial Midwinter Fair and the Riverside Date Festival.
Is this pretty consistent with past years?
This is a slight increase over last year for the Midwinter Fair.
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
How much of an increase is it?
I second it for discussion.
I believe it was $7,500 last year, and it's $10,000 this year.
And it may have been higher in the past.
Mr. Kelly, the state budgets, how is it going to affect
It
the
was
fair
15
for
in the
this
past.
coming year? Do you know?
We met with one of the fair board members, Joe Montenegro, earlier in late 2010, and even then they were looking ahead to a funding crunch.
Comments or questions from this board?
Madam President, Gloria mentioned to us that in the past we've contributed up to $15,000 to the fair. So this would be a little more conservative.
It's 10 and 5. Is that what you're saying?
It's 10 and 5.
Yeah.
So it's
10 and 5.
15,000.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't have any more comments. I'm ready to vote.
Please vote. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
You're up next, Dave.
Oh, stay there. Amendment to Spectrum Advertising Service Agreement?
Yes, President Mendoza, members of the board will recall that this item came before you in late December. Your board did act on a 3-year commitment to the incumbent firm, Spectrum Advertising. Spectrum does have outstanding invoices of approximately $20,000 that are they basically represent November and December billings. That can be attributed to our adding so many more videotaping events over the course of the year, and particularly in the fall, with the regional integrated water resource plan and filming virtually every Energy Consumers Advisory Committee meeting. Our plan, as we described when this item was acted on by the board, is to limit the number of ECAC meetings we videotape, to expand and possibly add WCAB meetings here in the Imperial Valley, and to generally be more discerning about the number of IID-related events that we cause to be videotaped over the course of the year. So we would ask that you add the $20,000 to retire the accumulated debt in 2010 and bring the $300,000 contract up to $320,000 and put it into effect for the next 3 years.
Okay, I'll move for approval. And then what that does is we voted on the 300, well, somebody got a second.
Second? Second for discussion.
Okay, we approved the 300, and so this basically, the 20 grand is for November, December of 2010.
Right.
Outstanding invoices, is that what you're saying?
This would allow us to retire that debt. What we did, the action taken by your board, that contract is not in effect, and it won't take effect until you act on this item.
All right.
Questions? Director
Yeah.
Hanks?
I wish this would have been brought to us before we would have considered the other contract. It's kind of
After the
after
fact.
the fact. What type of service did you say it was? It was.
The extra $20,000 accrued in mainly November and December, but also goes back into part of October. What happened was that the original service agreement ran out of funds. And so when your board did take the action to approve the new contract, contracts informed me that there was going to have to be a reconciliation because the action taken by the board was for the original amount recommended. Well, as you'll recall, we went back to to Spectrum and revised that downward by eliminating the promotional budget that it included. So, so there are outstanding invoices from 2010 that that have to be paid, and the easiest and cleanest way to do that is to add it on to the 3-year agreement now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
A question, Madam President, just
Yes.
a quick question. Kevin, did I hear right that this, some of the extra work was for the integrated water resource management plan? So would that 20,000 be charged to that cost center since we get grant money to defray that?
Well, that's an idea. We hadn't considered that. We have been doing, we've been videotaping those meetings since, I believe, June. So, but that is something that we could consider going forward.
I would ask the maker of the motion to reconsider that.
Yeah, no, I would, in my motion, I would say that any of the costs for the integrated water resource plan need to be paid back to the IID out of the grant fund that we get.
Right.
If we can.
We recoup that cost.
We will work on that. I
Please
think
vote.
that can be done.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 14, page 42. Mr. Broking, line of Energy Department line of credit refunding revenue bonds.
Yes, when I was here last week, we had a presentation on our planned energy financing. We have provided you with updated documents since then. In part of your board package, we had the resolution, preliminary official statement, a continuing disclosure certificate, an escrow agreement, and a bond purchase agreement. All of those documents had some changes to them except the continuing disclosure certificate. We've highlighted those changes for your review. We do expect that there will be, as Mr. Hunt mentioned last week, there are some blanks in some of the documents until such time as we get closer to bond issuance. They won't be able to be filled in. But we do know, based on the work that we did this week, there will be a few more disclosure items in the POS, which in my opinion are not substantive, but they will be highlighted along with all the other changes when you receive the final official statement. When I say highlighted, we'll redline those changes so you'll know the changes that have been made between today and the final official document.
And for record or for housekeeping matters, I'd just like to remind everybody, and I ask the secretary, make sure that the minutes will reflect that the package of documents that you have that shows the most recent red line of the documents that are attached to the agenda, the preliminary OS, the continuing disclosure certificate, the escrow agreement, and the bond purchase contract. They were made available on the website on Friday at 8 a.m. Apparently, some previous documents were posted on the website Thursday at 4 p.m., and I guess Mr. Verstick must have seen that, so he sent a letter to the president of the board, Ms. Mendoza, dated January 17th, complaining that the red line documents that had promised had not been posted. In fact, they were. The Brown Act requires that documents that are attached as part of an agenda have to be provided in advance. I think it's less than 72 hours, but we use as a benchmark the same 72 hours that we use for agenda requirements. We made those documents available in the general manager's office and on the website more than 72 hours prior to the meeting. So for purposes of Brown Act compliance, the documents in front of you were the documents that were produced ahead of time to the public. Now, these documents are living documents, and they will be changed to some extent, and Mr. Hunt will talk about that. And in fact, we already know about one minor change to these documents. The fact that the documents are subject to change doesn't mean there's anything wrong or we didn't give appropriate notice to the public. It just means that's the way this works. The notice issue is that what you're looking at was provided to the public with the necessary advance notice, and we've done that.
Okay. And then if I could, Mr. Hunt from Fulbright has a few words to say.
I would like, do you want me to make a motion ahead of time or wait for him?
Wait till he speaks.
Okay.
Mr. Hunt, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. The documents presented to you for approval authorize the issuance of not to exceed $85 million of electric system revenue refunding bonds and the execution and delivery of a resolution, an escrow agreement, a bond purchase contract, a preliminary official statement, and a continuing disclosure certificate, all in substantially the forms presented at this meeting, with such additions thereto or changes therein as the officer executing such documents may require or approve. The board's approval of the bond purchase contract requires that the true interest cost on the bonds shall not exceed 7% per year, and the underwriter's discount for the purchase of the bonds shall not exceed 0.7%. The approval by the board of the preliminary official statement relating to the bonds authorizes the general manager or the chief financial officer of the district to certify to the underwriter on behalf of the district that the preliminary official statement was deemed final as of its date within the meaning of Rule 15C212 promulgated under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, except for the omission of pricing, rating, and related information as permitted by said rule. And I'd just like to point out, as Mr. Broking mentioned, the preliminary official statement is the disclosure document that goes to investors to help them make a decision as to whether or not to purchase the bonds. The nature of that document, because it involves all members of the financing team, including the underwriters, is everybody reads through that document many, many times, trying to make sure they understand as much as possible how the district operates and details about the district's electric load and where it gets its power from, how much it produces, how much it buys, all those kinds of things. And as those underwriters go through that document and trying to understand as much as they can about the district, they ask questions. And sometimes the way in which it's written is correct, but it doesn't explain as much as they want to explain to their investors. And that's the reason that that document continually changes up until the time it's printed. I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor for why. The legal documents generally don't change much unless there's a request for the rating agency for a change or a structural change that the underwriters discuss with the district. So most of the changes are in the preliminary official statement, and it's the natural process of getting the best possible document we can to the investors that explains in as clear and concise English as we can and still meet all the legal requirements of the way in which it's done, but to give them a picture of what it is that they're considering buying.
Questions or comments?
I want to make a motion.
Could I just,
Yes.
a couple of additional comments. The board's approval of the financing documents in substantially the forms presented is the same process followed by virtually all public agencies in California. Because rating information, actual interest rates, principal amounts by maturity, redemption provisions, and related matters are often not known until after the date of board approval or until the date of sale of the bonds, it is valid and legal for the board to approve the parameters of the bonds and the authorizing documents and to delegate the approval of the final terms and details to district staff. This also allows for correcting typographical errors, non-material edits, and correction of and update the information relating to the district and the water and the electric system as necessary, contained in the preliminary official statement. Once the bonds are sold, issued, and delivered to the purchasers, our office will provide the final executed version of the documents approved by the board, marked to show all changes made to such documents following approval by the board. So the documents in front of you will come back to you after the bond issue is successfully sold and delivered, and it will show you all of the changes, and we'll be happy, to the extent you have questions about that, to explain to you why each and every change was made.
And one additional item. In the letter from Mr. Versick, where he complains about incorrectly that the documents were not on the website, he also indicates that this financing is deficient in his view for the same reason that the previous financing that is being challenged by the lawsuit is deficient, that the financing does not disclose certain underlying liabilities or potential liabilities on the water side. And although he has not sued, he's identified this similar problem. You'll note that in the litigation section of the OS at page 57 and the following pages, as a result of discussions with the underwriters and other parties involved in this financing, we did beef that section up, and we are incorporating by reference Mr. Foster and Mr. Morgan's complaint in the previous case, because we have to put potential purchasers on notice of that problem.
Be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, I have a question. And as we adjust this language here and address these issues, for all the reasons you've stated, Mr. Hunt, and also for the reasons you stated, Mr. Garber, are there language corrections or amendments that we can make to help alleviate this other situation we have with Morgan and Foster?
I believe that the language that we have in here is appropriate and does meet legal requirements. I don't think that anything we could do here is going to impact that situation.
Right. No,
The problem is that lawsuit alleges factual bases that are not correct, and we would have to make what we view to be an incorrect representation in order to provide the information in the OS that would satisfy their desire. They say in their letter that if we would only work with them, everything would be okay. Well, it wouldn't matter, because working with them means doing what they want you to do. They want us to accept certain underlying principles that they believe in that we don't think are correct. So I don't know how we would fix the documents to be consistent with their belief to make them happy if we think it's wrong.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2-2011. It's a resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $85 million in aggregate principal amount of electrical system refunding revenue bonds, Series 2011A, providing the terms of the 2011A bonds, establishing certain funds and accounts, approving forms of certain documents, and providing for certain other matters related thereto.
Is there a second to your motion? I'll second it for discussion. Discussion?
I've got a couple of questions. On the red line of electric system and water system projects, so we're assured that this refunding is strictly energy side.
Yes, it pledges the net revenues of the energy system to repay those bonds.
Okay, and on page 10, what was the reason for the contract change there?
Are you under resolution or the POS?
Yes, Article 5, 5.01.
Oh, Article 5, that was really at my request. I read that statement before, and it wasn't quite clear to me, so I asked that that be put in, just to make it clear that Goldman and City are representatives of the underwriters.
There's also some language, I believe, that before the board takes action, we need to make, wasn't there a minor modification to one of the documents?
Well, there are minor modifications to all of these documents.
But there was one that we were aware of now.
What page are you on, Jim?
I don't think I have a page. I think it's just a sentence or something.
Well, no, what I mentioned was that there are going to be updates to disclosure on the Energy Department that haven't been finalized yet, but they will be put in the final POS.
Okay.
But they're not there yet.
And what is the reason for needing to approve it now before those changes are made? What was your reasoning?
Well, we need to have authorization to move forward, and I think the changes that we make, they are not going to be substantial changes, so it's going to be in the form that you approve. If there's anything major that's not in the form that you approve, then we have to bring the documents back to you.
What do you call substantial? I remember that coming up in other matters where it was very substantial.
Well, I think what we're talking about on disclosure on the Energy Department they're not substantial in my mind. I don't think they're substantial in anybody else's mind. I think it's more of a clarification and to make sure that what we state is as clear and concise and understandable by everybody as we can. And that gets back to what Mr. Hunt was saying earlier. There are numerous people looking at all these documents, and we're trying to make it clear so everyone understands it, so sometimes it takes a little while to get to that point.
Okay, I've got two questions for Mr. Hunt. One, do you believe that we have had full disclosure?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and second, as representatives of the underwriters, Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, are they subject to any disclosures of conflict of interest?
Well, they are negotiating directly with the district to buy your bonds. They are not representing you, so I'm not sure that there would be any legal conflict of interest in that role that they would have. They're acting as as independent underwriters, purchasing your bonds from you.
If they serve any of those that are suing us, does that have to be disclosed? They're providing the service for them.
I am not familiar with what their regulatory disclosure obligations are, but that would not. Again, in this capacity, they're simply buying bonds from you. They're not representing you. They are negotiating with you. So they would not have to, from California law standpoint, would not have to disclose to you any other clients of their firms, as far as I know. I do not represent the underwriters, so I can't tell you what all of their internal rules are, but I don't believe there's no state law that I'm aware of that would regulate them in that regard.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you could check that for us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Further questions, comments? Mr. Hanks, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, Orby Hanks. I have a question concerning bonds, debts, and whatever, and I would just as soon wait until after you're through with your vote and deciding what you're going to do here, and hoping I can ask a question concerning bonded and long-term indebtedness. Would that be out of order?
Yes, it would, because once we vote, we move to the next item. So you want to speak? Speak now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have here a letter that was once addressed to you at a time when the district was about $800 million in debt, and we have gone back and forth. Things have been proposed, and nothing has really transpired, and it seems that we're borrowing money to pay off old debts, but we still owe money. And as a ratepayer and a citizen of this valley, along with others who are not astute in this field, I would hope that we being the public, and those of us that have debts and have to pay them and do try to pay them and understand what it is to meet a payroll and to pay off the bills. I hope they're not bets, bills. And when we come before the board and say, what is our long-term debt? We are talking about bonds, loans, etc. And it's somewhere along the line, some of us that go up, down, and borrow penny-ante amounts, when we go into our banker, they say, sorry, you have reached your limit. We're not loaning you any more money. And with back and forth of the things that are happening, we would like to know just where we stand. Is there any way that could be presented to the public in simple enough language to where that we could understand? Because it didn't come out in the budget, and everybody knows if you've got a loan or whatever, you've got to pay for it and you got to put it in the budget. I didn't see it in the last budget that was adopted. So I'm just curious what we do. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I think I understand, but let me ask Mr. Brokin if he understands what you're asking, and whether he can give you that answer.
If I understand him correctly, I think he's talking about what our debt to equity ratio should be. The board has established guidelines, I think it was last year, might have been the year before, as to what that percentage should be. We have forecasted that through 2014 based on our expected borrowings and what our assets will be through that year, and we will still be under the board's guidelines at that point.
And which are?
It's up to 60% debt, I believe, and we will be, I think the last forecast I've seen, and it will change depending upon interest rates we pay, but it was around forecasting around 55 or 56% in 2014.
Mr. Brokin, in the finalized budget of 1228, the concerns that Orby addresses under the debt service requirement, are they not all listed in this budget?
Yes, all our existing and even our proposed debts are listed in the budget.
Could you take the time to go with him through pages F1 through F10?
Certainly.
And point all those out to him?
Mr. Yes. Brook, 56% debt is how much in round numbers? More or less.
Well, the 2008, we have about $250 million outstanding. The 2003, I think it's around $64 million outstanding. and we plan on borrowing another $375 million over the next 4 years. So
Whatever that totals.
whatever that is, I think that's going to give us our long-term debt, excluding the pension bonds and any leases that we may have.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Hanks, Mr. Broking will sit with you and go over those numbers. Okay.
Okay, I heard what he said. I don't understand it. And this is what I'm asking. What I heard is what we're going to pay on it, but not what is the total amount. To me, whenever you're looking at a long-term debt, you're looking at the principal, you're looking at the interest, and the fees that are involved in all of this.
This is what I understood, Orby, that in 2014, 56%, and that totals to about $689 million in debt. That's what you wanted to know?
That's what we,
Yeah.
okay.
In debt.
That's what we owe. But we just had a presentation here by David Zavala, and they were talking about $40 million a year, 10 years to go. That's $400 million right there in long-term debt. We had a vote somewhere along the way in the irrigation water department where we were going to embark on a $300
Now,
million.
we're talking about energy, right? This is, Mr.
No, I'm talking about the IID.
Then-
that includes
okay.
energy and water.
Then, Mr. Hanks, if I would recommend that sit down with Mr. Broking and then see if he can explain to you on a one-to-one, and maybe your brother, Mr. Hanks, can sit with you, and maybe he can. Do you think you'd like to sit with them and kind of go over the numbers with
No,
him?
he's the older brother, and that doesn't work.
Okay. Mr. Broking has offered to sit down with you and go over those numbers. Are you willing to do that? And
Yeah, I'd be happy to sit down with what he's looking for. He's looking not only for the principal, but he wants to know what the interest is. And if I'm reading right, knowing where he's headed,
Yeah.
he's probably wanting to know when he brought up San Juan, what's off balance
yeah,
sheets.
I think I understand that as well. So can you sit with them, Jim, and then?
Yeah, I'll sit with him.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hanks. We're going to move on.
And we're going to sit with Junior here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If not, I'll be back.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Greg, that's a compliment.
Sure you will. Okay, are we ready to vote? Please vote. Okay, now we're going to go forward. Thank you for your vote of confidence, you guys. We need to move forward. Going back, I asked to pull number 4 from the consent agenda for service agreement to PSK Solutions, and I have concerns because it seems like it never seems to end, that we just keep on adding more and more transfer of knowledge, and our staff is not being trained like they should, so we could wean this consultant away. Back in 1998, it was $1.5 million, and then I went back to my records, and back in 2008, it was almost $500,000. If I have my numbers correctly, I'm trying to get organized here. And then again, we're going back to, and then in 2010, we added 168,000. And then now in 2011, 252,560, not to exceed 775,000. When is it going to end? When are we going to have our folks trained so they can take over the information technology and not have to pay millions of dollars on a consultant?
Well, I can't speak to the history. I've been here 9 months now. But I can tell you that this is not a simple application that's developed over that period of time. There's over right now 650 custom developed objects in this database.
Who developed them?
I don't know the history of all that's gone on from the last 12 years. So
Well, then for this one here, for the one that you're asking us to approve today,
yes,
these here, who developed these? Just, our folks can't develop these?
we certainly have the technical expertise to do it, but the knowledge transfer and the
Well,
time that
Damn, it's been 1998 to now. We can't transfer the knowledge?
As I said, I can't speak
I
to
know, and
prior years,
I
honestly.
understand.
I can tell you that I don't feel that right now is the proper time for us to embark on a transfer of this knowledge into IT, given all the critical projects that are associated around the water information system.
But what about the folks that work in water? Can't they develop this knowledge if they're going to be working? Who's here
Carlos-
from water? Carlos Villalon.
Mike King should be here
How
on
much
this one.
transfer of knowledge
Mike
do you
was
all need
unable
before it
to
sticks?
attend today, otherwise he.
Mr.
he
Vaughn,
would've
I'm
been
not
here.
capping on you. I
No,
understand.
I know. It's a valid,
But-
honestly, it's a valid question.
It is.
Yeah.
I look at this, and then I went back to my other agendas, and it seems like they're always transferring knowledge at a tune of $300,000, half a million dollars, transfer of knowledge and all this. When's it going to stop? Mr. Villalon?
Yeah, in the water
Talk to me.
department, we don't have Oracle database administrators or Oracle
Why not?
programmers
Why not?
because we outsourced.
Why?
That was a directive to outsource. It was
Isn't
also
it
being
cheaper to
supported
have
by the
them in-house
Metropolitan
than to
Water
pay all
District
this money?
program to be able to develop these ongoing programs. In addition, the government software that was developed for real estate, she administers because it was developed under Oracle as an outsource
You know,
project.
I don't understand. You outsource Oracle? And now, Mr. Vaughn, I am not IT literate like you are, so bear with me, please.
Well, some would think that I'm not so literate either, but
So Oracle is a program, correct?
Oracle is the database.
Database.
And wrapped around that are certain Oracle tools that allow you to develop in that the Oracle database language and the front end for those tools. So honestly, we've yet to, from an IT standpoint, to really take ownership, if you will, of this critical enterprise application. And I think that that's a longer term process than months. I think it's going to pass on for a year or two at least to get us
All right.
without risking the application.
Okay, well, this is another question.
Yep.
How many people does PSK Solutions, how many people do they have working with Oracle and all this? How many brains do they have working with the IID?
I believe that's essentially Penny.
Penny Kazias?
Yeah.
So she has all this knowledge, and our staff can't absorb that knowledge since 1999, 1998?
Well, I'm not sure that that was a requirement to do that. Our staff can absorb that knowledge. However, we just recently got one individual on our staff started the process to get trained in the Oracle database environment. So it's a process that needs to occur literally over a year or two, I would recommend, particularly given how critical this is, how complex it is, and in the state that it's in right now.
This is beyond me.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
How critical is it that this gets voted on today?
I think water needs to answer that.
The reason I ask is this all started with MWD1, I believe. Carlos,
Yeah, back in 1998. That was the MWD
started
program.
with getting a separate computer
And
to
that's
handle
correct.
the water separate from SAP computer because SAP couldn't handle water orders and
No.
et cetera. So.
This
Director Hanks,
predates SAP. This goes back to 1995 when the verification program and the associated database had to be developed. It was developed
I understand that.
independently,
Yeah.
separate from SAP. Has nothing to do
Director
with SAP.
Yeah, I've got a question because I've heard this come up year after year after year, like Director Mendoza mentioned. So my question is this: is there something proprietary about this that we don't want in the mix somewhere that we?
No,
for
this
security
is all
purposes
custom
or
software
whatever?
developed for water department functions.
You know,
Well, I know, but I get the feeling almost like we don't want to be a part of IT or something. You know, I don't know what to.
no, it's interesting because I have the minutes from February the 9th, 2010. And at that question, I asked, when was our staff would be ready to take over some of the tasks assigned to PSK Solutions. And I was told that one of the work orders is the transfer of knowledge, and a transition plan is currently being developed. How developed is that transition plan, Mr. Villalon?
That really lies in the IT area. That's where the transition is going to go to.
So who can answer that question? Mr. Campbell, do you know?
About the transition plan?
Well, that's what the minutes say.
I think you need to
Is Carlos is identified.
get Mike King in here to explain this. He's been with this deal from day one.
Well, he's not here
I'll
now.
give it.
I know
I'll
he's
gi-
not here, but what
I'll
I
give
mean
it a
is
good
move
shot.
Move it till the next meeting.
Michael, I'll give it a good shot. I mean,
Oh.
because I've been dealing with this since 2006, and I understand the board's frustration that we have an individual who, year in, year out, we've been spending money on to support the system. As Carlos and both Dane have identified, there are many parts to this system. It is all custom software. Penny is the person who wrote the majority of that software. Transfer of a system like that, it's the equivalent of asking, well, how come my IID IT staff isn't writing the SAP software system? It's a very large thing of custom software that, yes, there is a transfer of knowledge, but it's not just, okay, pick up the whole thing and move it over to IT. One, there's a limited amount of resources within IT that are dedicated to the water systems. And as the board knows, TruePoint took up a significant amount of those resources. Plus, as Carlos has identified, there's a few other systems. Part of what we're working to do and have been planning in terms of that transfer program, what are all those ancillary systems that Penny has been involved with, and how do we move them off of her plate so that she can stay focused on the WIS system, the WIS system as I call it, which is going to be the backbone of help me, Carlos. It's going to be it's basically the backbone data set for the system conservation program.
Well, isn't that what
So,
you're
yes,
working
there
on,
is-
like for SCADA, for the communication plan that you have?
SCADA is a
that-
system that's going to monitor the flow. It captures the information
Is it all going to be entailed with SCADA as well, or
No,
separate?
SCADA is just one source
Just
of
one?
information. There's other
Right.
sources
Gonna
of
be another
water.
one? Okay, I'm
The
sorry.
WIS,
go on.
system is the repository of all the information about the statistics of the water environment. Again, it's a very, very complicated set of circumstances, and both Carlos knows, Dane knows the frustration that does exist. That look, we've got a resource that is basically the knowledge repository of this information system, and she's been doing this for us since 1999, and at some point,
1998.
well, I know definitely from 99, but possibly from 98, that at some point in time, she's going to tire of us. So the issue is, how do we...
What we pay her.
Well, at some point she will, I'm pretty sure of that. So the challenge is, how do we continue to take those things that aren't critical to the work that she had done in the past, move them off into IT, and keep focusing on how we manage the Oracle system. And again, there are resources that we're dedicating to understand and manage that. Again, it's part of it, transition of how do we encompass all technology and manage that as one entity.
Are we totally dependent upon her for this system?
We are not, and Dane can correct me if I'm wrong, which he's very capable of doing. As far as the Oracle database and the Oracle system itself, no, that's a skill set that, yes, we have that. As to how the WIS system is, the data manipulation within there, the formulas, the information sets that have been created, and the data itself, and how to manipulate and understand yes, you can write a program and say, okay, give me this and give me this, and I want that as a result. The challenge with that is you have to have an idea of what the end result is supposed to be. Penny is the one that has that superset of knowledge of the WIS system and its information set. To just say, okay, hey, programmer, go write me a report. It's not a report kind of system, right, Carlos?
Well, what
that's
happens
correct.
to something happens to her?
Yeah, well, what if,
But
Where are we going
It's-
to be?
It is a risk, but I think it's a measured risk. It was my opinion that we shouldn't try to take this on this year to make an aggressive transition.
Mr. Bond, we've heard that every year.
Well,
You know
that
what?
might
And
be.
I've been
Not for you,
asking
but-
that.
I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that.
I went back to the minutes. I asked the same question back in
But let me say
February of
this,
last
I
year.
would say that her rates are very reasonable. I consider her to be a high value, or for her service to be of significant value. I'm not so certain all total that our internal cost to support this, maintain it, understand it, and to deliver the service level she's providing would be much cheaper, honestly. So I don't see it as one of the things that we want to put at the top of our target list to try to reduce cost around.
I understand.
You made, I mean, that's my assessment after 9 months. I would continue to have her continue to do what she's doing, providing the service she's doing. She is the expert. Yes, we need to get serious about transferring that knowledge, but that in itself is a significant effort to transfer that
Back to
knowledge.
Mendel.
So
If you tried to transfer this thing over to IT right away and something went haywire, it would affect the operations of the district, water orders and everything else. So how much of a hassle would that be if all of a sudden you've got problems because things aren't working properly in the transfer?
The biggest
and you
issue
got-
would be at the end of the year, the verification program has to create these water conservation estimates for reporting for the contract with Metropolitan. So that would be the key thing.
Yeah.
Other areas would be support for the real estate module and land management activities. That could also impact some contractors, some ongoing negotiations. And then the store data from operations, well, that's after the fact. It really doesn't affect operations.
But it could cause a problem. Like Dwayne says, you know, things are working pretty smooth. I agree. If we can move some of this stuff over, we need to start moving it over. We can't keep talking about it all the time.
And from a technical level, we are supporting down at the lower levels of the technical architecture. We're supporting the transfer and the upgrade of the database, and the transition of some of the hardware in the platform. So we are. It's not like we're not involved, but this is going to take a significant period of time to do this correctly without risking service level to the customers in water.
Well, let's
So-
just hope this lady is around for a long, long time, because it doesn't look like we're transferring a lot of knowledge, I can tell you that.
She got into this thing on the MWD deal and et cetera, and so she's been there, and I know she's been doing a good job, and I think you guys have just become dependent on her to continue to do that instead of trying to move it over to IT or whatever. Because like you said, it's not high on the radar screen and it's working.
The other important thing is it's more than just moving. It's more than just addressing an individual and their consulting contract. It's how do we interoperate within IT to support water, and a lot of the relationships are there. A lot of the interactive day-to-day knowledge exists. So it's not just a technical thing. It's also a business analyst issue to build that
Mr.
in
Vaughn,
between water and IT.
That's my point, because it's only one person with all this knowledge and all this skill. If something happens to her, we're up a creek. That's my concern. We're putting all the eggs in one basket. So we need to start weaning away from that and truly transferring the knowledge to our staff.
Mm-hmm.
That's my concern. You know, this time next year, it'll be another service agreement, and we're still working on the transition plan. And I know she's doing a good job. She's very capable and great. But my concern is if something happens to her, what's going to happen to to the district. Who's going to replace her? Who's going to replace her knowledge? That's my concern.
Specifically, I couldn't tell you, but we would find the resources to address
All due
it. So-
respect, Director Mendoza, you're using the wrong analogies. They're
What?
painting themselves into a corner.
Well, into a corner or whatever. Yeah,
You know,
eggs in a basket,
I-
whatever.
I understand this, what you need and everything, but I know this starting on 5 years, I've heard the same argument. And she may be exactly what you need, and she may be the only game in town, but if we don't start making some moves, we're going to be in trouble at some point in time. She's going to get hooked up with some billionaire and refuse to come down here anymore.
And that's my concern, that we don't have a plan to really transition the knowledge. We talk about it, we write about it, but I don't really see it happening. That's my concern. So do we have, what's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I mean, I'll move to approve this amendment to service agreement number 8100000935 with PSK Solutions.
Now, I'll make a motion table till Mike King gets back.
That's fine. I'll second that motion.
Okay.
You're voting on the table. You vote on.
But yeah, he didn't get a second to his motion, so this is to table it till the next meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
all right, please vote.
Okay. Lay it on Mike.
Okay.
All right.
February 1st.
We're adjourned. Any more business to discuss? No? We're adjourned. I'm sorry.
Could we get the minutes
I
from the
didn't get
last
you-
4 years?